And I'm in conversation today with Mike Pick, who's one of our lead sales trainers, and for those who don't know, actually a very good drummer as well in his spare time. And I guess what we're looking at here is, how do we make sales meetings effective? What's the start point of that?
Okay, well, I think you're right, Isabel. Many people ask, what is the beginning of a relationship, a contributive and consultative relationship with customers? And the answer lies in holding good, productive, and progressive meetings that both you and the customer take value from. It's interesting to note that we often talk about in the Masterclass courses about a recent survey carried out by Hewlett-Packard, albeit in the States, and they asked several thousand customers how they felt about sales meetings that they'd had with their company, and from their point of view, were they progressive and worthwhile. And the results came back, and unfortunately, only 22% of customers surveyed said, yes, the meetings we have with your company are progressive from our point of view. Second question was, well, why is that? What's the number one reason? And the number one reason given was a lack of preparation, perhaps a lack of an agenda and a plan and a purpose by that salesperson. So quite concerning.
So what would be your advice in that? Because that's really quite frightening that so few make progress. And what would you recommend?
Yeah. Okay. So at Masterclass, we recommend a very simple technique that requires preparation before the call, but then it only takes about 45 seconds to a minute to verbally deliver, and in so doing takes control of that meeting to render it both progressive and informative for both the seller and the customer. So what we say is that every call must have a wrap, okay? And that wrap stands for a reason for the call, a valid business reason, an agenda, and then a payoff. What's going to happen at the end of the meeting? What will the next step be? Okay?
Well, that sounds very simple, and maybe that's not as easy as it sounds.
No, it's not. It's not quite as simple as it sounds. Let me give you an example of a wrap, okay, a verbal wrap. So let's supposing I'm representing an IT company and I'm visiting the head of a data center. And we've had our coffee and we've talked about the weather and the cricket or the rugby, and there's a little lull, a little bit of a sigh, and it's like, let's get down to business. So I would then say, Roger, the purpose of our meeting today is to discuss how we might help you reduce complexity in your data center and indeed reduce costs. So firstly, I would like to hear from you about your current situation, how you operate your services, and indeed any areas you've already identified as potential areas for improvement. Secondly, I'd be interested to hear any plans you have or ideas to make those improvements. And then perhaps when I've heard that, I could explain how we've helped other customers in a similar situation. If you're happy with all of that, then I'd like to ask you, what you'd like to do as the next stage. So how does that sound? Now, 95% of the time, Roger will say, yeah, go for it. But as you say, Isabel, it's not quite as simple as that. So what I've just said, if you can just try and remember that 45 seconds introduction, have I said the reason? Yes, I did. I said the reason for the meeting is. Did I set an agenda? I did. I actually set 3 points in the agenda. Firstly, I would like to understand your current situation. So I'm exploring. I've earned the right to ask him questions about his current situation, what pain he has, etc. I then said secondly, I'd like to explore what ideas you've already got. Because again, this guy may have a particular route he wishes to go down to solve his issues. And then only when I've heard those 2 things, then it's time for me to speak. And then I said, well, then perhaps I can explain to you how we've helped other customers in a similar situation. I then gave the payoff, and I empowered the customer. I said, if you are happy at the end of that, then perhaps we can discuss what you would like to do as the next steps. And then, of course, I closed him on how does that sound. And as I say, usually they go, yep, go for it, and then you go back and you start going through your agenda. It's very effective, and the customer then has had all his questions in the back of his mind answered. Is there a reason for this meeting? Yes, there is. What's the agenda? What's going to happen? Yes, I know that. And what's going to happen at the end of the meeting? well, I'm empowered, I'm going to have a say on what we do next.
That's great and really good advice there, Mike. So in terms of your top tips and takeaways to make sure that meetings go as well as they possibly can from the customer or the prospect's perspective, what would you say?
Okay, I would say that for every meeting, write out a wrap. Okay, so perhaps for the next 20 or 30 meetings you have, write out a wrap. It doesn't take long. Practice, practice, practice. And use that wrap technique even for internal meetings with colleagues, or if you have staff, with staff as well. Second tip is keep it short. The wrap is only 45 seconds to a minute. It's not 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes introduction. It's very snappy. Keep the agenda to those 3 items: explore, explore, demonstrate. You can always go into subsections once you get into the meat of the meeting, but in this introduction, keep it short. Finally, make sure you do close on the wrap. If you notice, I said, how does that sound? And then you've got the ability then to go through your agenda, or of course, if the customer may say, well, can I just add this topic or perhaps alter that one slightly? You've then closed on an agreed agenda. So my final tip is use wrap for internal meetings, conference calls, and sales calls. Really, for the rest of your career, add up how many meetings you have in a year, how much longer you've got to carry on working, and it comes out to a big number, I'm sure. So every meeting you have from now on, make them effective and make sure that you're in that top 20% who have progressive and effective calls.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. And if you enjoyed that or would like to hear some more about some of the things that we do in contribution selling and in Masterplan, please do make contact with us, and we really look forward to hearing from you. Thank you again, Mike.